In a world where first impressions often close doors, one woman's quiet determination challenges the limits of expectation and changes everything. Join us as we step into her story, where courage and intellect break through barriers and reveal the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. The lecture hall at Texas State University hummed with a quiet tension as Professor Richard Harrington stepped up to the podium. Known as a brilliant mathematician and the head of the department, Harrington carried a reputation for his sharp intellect and an equally sharp disdain for anyone he deemed beneath him. His silver beard and impeccably tailored blue suit gave him an air of unquestionable authority, his cold gaze sweeping the room like a judge weighing his jury. Mary Mitchell slipped quietly into a back row seat, smoothing the folds of her simple gray cardigan over a crisp white blouse. At 37, she was noticeably older than most of the graduate students filling the room, but she had no intention of fading into the background. This wasn't about blending in. It was about breaking through. Today's symposium would challenge Riemann's hypothesis and explore its potential impact on quantum computing, Harrington announced, his commanding voice immediately silencing the room. His eyes lingered briefly on Mary, just long enough for her to catch the faint curl of disapproval on his lips. She knew that look all too well. It was the same dismissive glance she had met 3 years earlier when she applied for a maintenance job on campus. The symposium kicked off with doctoral candidates presenting their latest findings. Mary scribbled notes with precision, her eyes lighting up during the complex discussions of theoretical mathematics. When the floor opened for questions, her hand remained firmly down. Experience had taught her that people like her, those who worked in facilities management, weren't expected to speak in spaces like this. During the break, she overheard whispers from 2 students nearby. "Who's the cleaning lady taking notes?" one snickered. "Probably just auditing for some continuing education credits," the other replied, voice dripping with condescension. Harrington hates it when people outside mathematics show up. Mary gripped her notebook tighter, forcing her expression to stay composed. They didn't know that math had been her constant companion since childhood. They couldn't see the intricate equations dancing behind her eyes, equations she taught herself after long shifts while raising her daughter alone. Those students had no idea. When the symposium resumed, Harrington took the stage to unveil his latest, controversial approach to an unsolved mathematical problem. His explanation was polished, elegant, but Mary immediately spotted a subtle flaw. This was an equation she had wrestled with during countless sleepless nights. "Any questions?" Harrington's tone suggested he expected silence. But Mary's hand rose almost before she realized it. The room froze. Every eye snapped toward her. Harrington's eyebrows arched in mock surprise. "Yes, ma'am," he said, dripping with condescension. "I was wondering about the variable transformation in step 4, Mary said, her voice softer than she intended. "Wouldn't that create inconsistencies when applied to the boundary conditions?" Silence hung heavy. Students exchanged uneasy glances. Then Harrington's gaze hardened. "Your name?" "Mary Mitchell." "And your department?" She hesitated. "Facilities management." A ripple of whispers spread like wildfire. Harrington's face morphed from surprise into amusement. "Facilities management," he repeated slowly, savoring the phrase. "How interesting. And you believe you've found an error in my work?" Mary's cheeks burned, but she steadied herself. "Not exactly an error. More a potential complication that—" Harrington cut her off. "Instead of questioning established mathematics, perhaps you should focus on more accessible pursuits." Laughter bubbled up among the students. Mary wished she could disappear into her seat. What none of them knew was that this moment of humiliation was about to ignite something remarkable. Harrington, sensing his advantage, leaned into the moment. "Since our guest from facilities management is so confident in her mathematical prowess," he said, straightening his tie with deliberate slowness. "Perhaps she'd like to demonstrate it." He gestured toward the chalkboard. "Come forward, Ms. Mitchell." Mary froze. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to escape this public spectacle. But beneath that fear was a deeper force. Pride, resilience, the weight of years spent underestimated. Slowly, she rose. Each step toward the front echoed in the hushed hall, whispers trailing her like shadows. Harrington handed her the chalk with a smirk, avoiding eye contact. "Let's make this accessible," he declared, the word dripping with mockery. He turned to the board and wrote a complex differential equation, one from advanced multivariate calculus. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. The real challenge was the humiliation baked into the moment. "Take your time," Harrington said with false generosity. "We're eager to learn from diverse perspectives." The room erupted in muffled laughter. Mary's hand trembled slightly as she stared at the board. Behind her, someone whispered, "This is painful to watch." Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a visiting professor from MIT seated in the front row, frowned at Harrington's spectacle, but said nothing. Her eyes fixed on Mary with quiet curiosity. Mary inhaled deeply. The numbers and symbols began to fall into place, patterns forming in her mind like old friends. She had never had formal training beyond community college, yet math had always been her refuge. After her husband left, after her daughter's bedtime, between long cleaning shifts. She raised the chalk and made the first mark. Harrington started to intervene. "Perhaps we should simplify," but stopped when he saw her confidence. Silence swept over the room as Mary methodically worked through the problem. Her nerves faded, replaced by the familiar rhythm of mathematical logic. This was no longer a judgmental lecture hall. This was her world, where numbers spoke clearly. After 2 minutes, she finished the last step, set the chalk down, and stepped back. Harrington stared at the board, his smugness dissolving into confusion. He scanned her work for flaws but found none. Not only was the solution correct, it carried a surprising elegance. "That's correct," he admitted grudgingly, though anyone with basic calculus training could manage it. Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow, exchanging a glance with a colleague. Unwilling to concede defeat, Harrington swiftly erased the board. "Let's try something more challenging," he said, his voice sharp. "Something from my current research." He wrote a new equation, one Meredith recognized. This was cutting-edge theoretical mathematics, far beyond standard curriculum, with implications for quantum computing encryption. "If you'd prefer to return to your seat, I wouldn't blame you," Harrington added, eyes locked on Mary. The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet. The room held its breath, expecting her to retreat. Instead, Mary picked up the chalk again. Her initial confidence wavered. This equation was different, complex, abstract, with unfamiliar notation. Doubt crept in. Had she overstepped? Was Harrington right about her place? The silence deepened. Students leaned forward, anticipation mixing with pity and barely hidden amusement. "As I suspected," Harrington muttered, reaching for the chalk. The symposium was about to continue when Mary quietly interrupted, pulling the chalk back toward her. Something had clicked, a pattern hidden within the tangled web of symbols on the board. Her mind raced as she recalled an article she'd read just last month during a brief lunch break at the library, hunched over a computer screen. It described a groundbreaking approach to quantum encryption mathematics. Something new, something promising. She began to write, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. The energy in the room shifted. Students exchanged puzzled glances. Even Harrington's smug smirk faltered as he watched her navigate the problem with unexpected skill. Dr. Elizabeth Chen leaned forward in her seat, eyes widening in astonishment. Mary wasn't just solving the problem. She was taking a path no one in that room had considered. an unconventional route fueled by intuition and insight. Halfway through, Mary stopped, frowning at her work. She'd hit a barrier, a dead end in the equation's logic. Harrington's mouth curled into a triumphant smile. "A valiant attempt," he sneered, reaching for the chalk to take control again. But Mary held firm, her gaze locked on the board as her mind raced through possibilities. The hall around her faded until only the problem remained. Then, like a key sliding smoothly into a lock, she saw it. An elegant transformation that could simplify the entire equation. Her chalk scratched across the board once more, the only sound breaking the heavy silence. As she applied her insight, audible gasps rippled through the front row of senior faculty. Dr. Chen whispered urgently to a colleague, who nodded in vigorous agreement. Harrington's face drained of color. No longer watching with disdain, his eyes betrayed alarm. This shouldn't have been possible, especially not from someone without formal training. "That's not the standard approach," he said sharply. Mary didn't answer. She couldn't. She was lost in the flow, immersed in the mathematics like she had countless times before. Lost in a place where numbers made perfect sense and patterns revealed themselves. She wasn't just solving Harrington's problem, she was improving it, uncovering efficiencies he had missed. Tension shifted palpably. The students who had once laughed were now silent, their expressions a mix of confusion and newfound respect. The professors whispered urgently amongst themselves. Harrington stood torn, his desire to hold power clashing with a begrudging fascination for the insight unfolding before him. As Mary neared the solution, Harrington moved to the board, examining her work closely. His finger traced one of her transformations. "This simplification," he said, voice tight with restrained emotion, "where did you learn it?" Mary finally met his gaze. "I didn't learn it," she said softly. "I just saw it." For a long moment, the prestigious professor and the maintenance worker stood locked in silent confrontation. Two worlds bridged by an equation neither had expected. Before Harrington could respond, Dr. Chen rose from her seat, her voice ringing clear across the hall. "That's the Lei Takahashi method," she announced. "It was only published last month in the International Journal of Quantum Mathematics." Her intense stare fixed on Mary. "How could you possibly know about it?" The question hung heavy in the air as every eye turned to Mary. She looked down at the chalk in her hand, suddenly aware of the crossroads before her. For years, she'd hidden her gift, convinced no one would believe a single mother working maintenance could grasp advanced mathematics. She'd lived in the shadows, learning quietly, keeping her passion secret. But now, exposed in the spotlight, she faced a choice: retreat into anonymity or stand boldly in her truth. "I didn't know it was called the Lei Takahashi method," she said, voice steadier now. "I've never had formal training beyond community college." Harrington scoffed, though the conviction was gone. "These concepts require years of specialized education." Dr. Chen stepped closer to the board, studying Mary's work with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. "Yet here it is, perfectly executed. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps give light to voices that deserve to be seen and heard." She turned toward Mary. "How?" Mary took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the room's attention pressing down on her. Her thoughts flickered to her daughter Lily, working double shifts to save for college. A girl who had watched her mother shrink herself for years to avoid judgment. "Mathematics has always made sense to me," Mary said simply. "When I look at equations, I see patterns, connections. Solutions reveal themselves if I look long enough." A student in the third row broke the silence. "But you work in maintenance, why aren't you?" "Because life happened," Mary interrupted, steel entering her voice. "I had my daughter young. Her father left. I needed stable work with health insurance." She gestured toward the incomplete solution still on the board. This doesn't pay bills or provide health care for a child. The room fell into thoughtful silence as the reality of her circumstances settled over the academic audience. Harrington, now genuinely puzzled rather than condescending, asked, "But why attend this symposium?" Mary met his gaze steadily. "Because I love mathematics. Because learning doesn't stop when life gets complicated." The chalk felt heavy in her hand as she turned back to the board. The unfinished equation waited, along with a decision that could change her life forever. She could stop now, retreat to the safety of the predictable. Or she could finish and fully reveal the brilliance she'd kept hidden for so long. Mary lifted the chalk, her hand steady now. "I'm going to finish this," she declared quietly, more to herself than to the room. With that simple vow, Mary Mitchell stepped into her power, ready to show these elite minds exactly what a woman from facilities management was capable of. The room fell utterly silent. The faint scratch of chalk against the blackboard sounded like thunder in the hushed hall. Her mind cleared, and she returned to the pure mathematics, where academic titles meant nothing, and only correct answers held sway. With fluid grace, she worked through the final steps. When she reached a particularly stubborn section, she paused, tilted her head thoughtfully, and took an unexpected approach, creating a substitution that elegantly simplified the entire equation. Dr. Chen gasped softly, whispering to her colleague, "She's using dimensional analysis to collapse the quantum variance. I've never seen anyone approach it that way." Harrington stood rigid, his expression unreadable, as Mary's solution unfolded before them all. It wasn't just correct, it was innovative, elegant, the kind of mathematical insight that transcended mere calculation. When Mary boxed the final value and stepped back, a hush fell over the room. The solution glowed on the blackboard like a revelation. She hadn't just solved Harrington's challenge, she'd improved it, uncovering efficiencies never before published. Dr. Chen was the first to break the silence. "That's remarkable," she said, approaching the board. "You've collapsed 3 steps into 1 with this transformation." She turned to the audience. "This isn't just correct, it's brilliant." A murmur swept through the crowd. Students who had snickered before now regarded Mary with open awe. Several professors discreetly pulled out their phones to photograph her work. Harrington cleared his throat. "While unconventional, I suppose the approach has merit," he conceded grudgingly, the words clearly painful to utter. "Merit?" Dr. Chen challenged, raising her eyebrows at him. "Richard, this solution could advance our understanding of quantum encryption mathematics. This is publishable work." Mary stood quietly, chalk dust clinging to her fingers, strangely detached from the growing excitement around her. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about answering the challenge. "Miss Mitchell," Dr. Chen addressed her directly, "have you documented any of your other mathematical insights?" Mary hesitated. "I have notebooks. Just things I work on at night when I can't sleep." "Notebooks?" Harrington repeated, curiosity overcoming pride. "What kind of mathematics do you explore?" "Different things," Mary answered, suddenly self-conscious. "Mostly number theory, some work on prime factorization algorithms." Dr. Chen and Harrington exchanged surprised looks. Prime factorization lies at the heart of cryptography, one of the most sophisticated branches of applied mathematics. "I'd like to see those notebooks," Dr. Chen said firmly. A student from the front row stood up. "That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen," he declared, applauding. Others joined in, applause swelling until it filled the lecture hall. Mary's cheeks flushed, not with shame, but with a quiet pride she hadn't expected. The applause was unbidden, genuine. Across the room, a young woman who had watched intently throughout the demonstration caught Mary's eye and nodded with deep respect, as if witnessing something life-changing. In that moment, Mary realized her journey was no longer just about math. She had become visible, truly visible, For perhaps the first time in her adult life, her mind, her knowledge, her potential had stepped out of the shadows and into the light. Though the symposium had officially ended over an hour ago, the lecture hall buzzed with life. Professors and graduate students surrounded Mary, eager to ask questions about her insights. Dr. Chen remained by her side, protective and supportive. "Your intuitive grasp of multidimensional analysis is extraordinary," a quantum computing professor said. "Have you ever considered formal study?" Mary gave a wistful smile. "I've considered it, but I can't afford it." Across the room, Harrington was deep in animated conversation with the department dean, his gestures often directed toward Mary. His earlier condescension had evolved into a complex mix of reluctant respect and defensiveness. Dr. Chen touched Mary's arm gently. "We should discuss your future," she said softly. "MIT has fellowship programs designed for exceptional cases like yours." Mary looked up, startled. "MIT? Me? Talent like yours doesn't come along often," Dr. Chen replied. "It would be mathematical malpractice to let it go untapped." The crowd parted as Harrington approached, his silver beard trembling slightly with suppressed emotion. "Mitchell," he said formally, "the department would like to review your notebooks if you're willing. There may be opportunities to discuss." His words were measured, careful, not quite an apology but the closest he could offer. Mary nodded. "I'll bring them tomorrow." Dr. Chen interjected sharply. "I'll be reviewing them personally." Her pointed look made Harrington's mouth tighten. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Mary gathered her things. Her phone buzzed with 5 missed calls from the babysitter, a stark reminder of the practical realities that had always limited her mathematical dreams. As she walked toward the exit, a young female student hesitated before speaking. "Miss Mitchell," she said softly, "I'm studying engineering and I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" Mary asked. "For showing me that where you start doesn't determine what you know." The student's eyes shone with emotion. "I'm a first-generation college student from a rural town. People make assumptions about me, too." A warmth blossomed in Mary's chest. She hadn't realized how deeply her moment would resonate with others. Outside, the evening air felt charged with possibility. Mary took a deep breath, thinking of the notebooks waiting at home. Years of solitary exploration soon to be examined by some of the nation's leading mathematicians. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. For the first time in years, Mary allowed herself to imagine a future where her mind, not her uniform, defined her. 6 months later, Mary stood before a different classroom, smaller, filled with eager undergraduate faces, watching her explain a complex theorem. Her gray cardigan sleeves were rolled up, her confidence unmistakable. No longer hesitant or apologetic about claiming her space, her life had transformed at breathtaking speed. After the symposium, Dr. Chen arranged an emergency fellowship, recognizing that talent like Mary's couldn't wait for traditional academic timelines. 2 of Mary's theoretical approaches had already been published with her as the primary author. Harrington had come around too, though it took several departmental meetings where he was outvoted. Now he grudgingly acknowledged her insights, especially after her work on quantum encryption caught national attention. But the biggest change was internal. Mary no longer hid her intelligence or passion. She spoke with authority, knowing her value wasn't in credentials, but in the power of her mind. Her daughter Lily had transferred to the university on a full scholarship, inspired by her mother's example to pursue her own dreams unapologetically. As Mary finished her explanation, a young woman raised her hand, uncertainty in her eyes but determination in her voice. Mary called on her immediately, remembering what it was like to feel unseen. "Never be afraid to raise your hand," she told her students. "The question you're afraid to ask might change everything, not just for you, but for everyone in the room." If Mary Mitchell's journey from overlooked to extraordinary touched your heart, remember this. Genius often hides in the most unexpected places, masked not by lack of ability but by circumstance. Thank you for watching this story unfold, a powerful reminder that kindness, compassion, and courage have the quiet strength to change lives in ways we often can't imagine. Every small act of understanding and justice creates ripples that reach far beyond what we see. If this story touched your heart, please consider sharing it with someone who might need a little light today. And if you'd like to join us in celebrating the human spirit through more stories like this, subscribing is a gentle way to stay connected. As the poet Mary Oliver once said, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" May we all choose kindness. Until next time, take care and be well.